Good morning. I know it's been an amazing start to your event. I am so delighted and proud and honored to be here. I'm particularly delighted because together with my colleagues Shanti Amaratunga and Wim Rahman, I represent the board that advises youth for road safety. So we are really delighted and honored to be part of the process. So welcome again to your own assembly. And thank you very much for allowing some of us who are a little bit older than you to actually participate. You know, when I was 18 and I finished high school, I was in Pakistan. I had just done my A-levels. And I said to myself, I think I lived till I turned 50 with a good productive 32 years, and then probably it's too old to live anymore after that. Well, I turned 50 4 years ago, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm now 50 years old, and I thought I would die at the age of 50. So at every year, my conceptualization of healthy aging goes higher and higher and higher, because one begins to think about one's intellectual age, how you view yourself, versus one's chronological age, what your actual age is, right? But you all have the opportunity to actually have the power of both. You are young, but you're also intellectually extremely bright and smart. And if I have a sense of the energy of this room, it means that there is a lot of hope that we have, right? And that hope is important. And today, in the next 50 minutes, you're going to see how that hope is not present in one part of the world, but across the world, from where you all come. So I'm so excited, and I'd like you to really join me in welcoming to the stage 5 amazing youth from around the world. Let me welcome Grace from Australia, Farah from Bangladesh, Arthur from Brazil, Simon from Nigeria, and Allison from the United States of America. So folks, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to request each one of your colleagues to make an opening statement, 2 minutes, just for us to get to know them. Who are they? What is their story? What do they do in road safety? And once they've each made a statement, we'll have a little bit of interaction. But what I really want to do is to ask you to join us in this conversation, okay? So listen to their stories closely. Think about a question. And let me tell you, there is no question that will embarrass them. There is no question that will embarrass me. So feel free. This is a safe space. You're amongst friends. You're amongst the youth assembly, okay? So let's make this a conversation which is worthy of this 1 hour. Let me begin by first asking Grace. Grace, you're from Australia. You've had an incredible insight and an experience around road safety. Talk to us a little bit about your vision for road safety. Your opening statement, yeah.
G'day. Always a crowd pleaser. My name's Grace. I'm from Australia. Unfortunately, I'm more likely to die in a road accident than a snake bite. Kangaroos are a little bit more dangerous than snakes, for those who don't know. I have a photograph that I want to show you all. This is me on the left with my childhood best friend, Beau. We're clearly playing on a swing when we were very young. When we were 5 years old, Beau and his mum, Michelle, died in a car crash. I'm unfortunately confident, and we've already heard today from people like Scott, that everyone in this room in some way has been affected by the loss of someone on the road. When we speak about road safety, Beau and his mum Michelle are just another example of what happens when our roads are no longer a safe space. Today, we are here to inspire and motivate action on road safety. And to me, there is absolutely no greater inspirational motivator than trying to prevent this premature loss of life, which is preventable. My everyday job I'm so grateful to say is to advocate to the Queensland and Australian governments on trying to make our transport networks safer. I do this in a fantastic team at the Royal Automobile Club of Queensland. We collectively represent 1.8 million people in Queensland, and we have been advocating for safer outcomes on our transport network since we were established in 1905. We engage our communities and we use robust evidence to develop policy and project recommendations, which we then take to government representatives and also spread in the media on TV, the internet, newspaper articles, and the radio. Keeping the pressure on the government every single day with our messaging is how we achieve outcomes and make our roads safer. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to be here today, to meet with you all. Thank you so much to the amazing organisers, Floor, the teams behind, all the other panellists and everyone here for making the journey to discuss such an important topic. I really look forward to discussing with you all how we can make transport safer and save lives around the world.
Thank you very much, Grace. First, obviously, we are very empathetic for your loss, and we've recognized a moment of silence this morning. But secondly, for your work in lobbying the government. We'll come back to you and reflect a little bit on that. Let me next welcome Farah. She's from Bangladesh. Farah, your opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. I'll share a story from Bangladesh regarding the road safety issues. Bangladesh, many of you may know, is a South Asian country with around 200 million population. And according to an estimation of WHO, every day 60 people die in road traffic injury in Bangladesh. And around 200,000 got killed, and around more 50,000 people got injured in road traffic injury annually. As we know, it's a multifactorial thing, and many causes are behind this, but one of the vital causes is the lack of proper rules for safety laws and the implementation of existing laws. So generally, the responsibility to address this issue lie with the policymakers or stakeholders from professional or government bodies. But the youth in Bangladesh in 2018 set a very bright example that how youth can actively take part in policy formulation and implementation. So I will share the story now. It's on 29th July 2018. Two high school students were run over by an unlicensed bus driver who were racing against other buses to get passengers. This causes a massive nationwide public protest involving about 500,000 students. This is initially was in the capital city, Dhaka, then it spread all over the city like a wildfire. And the student made non-violent road blockage, human chains, processions to demand justice for this incident, and also to ensure a change in the policy for safer roads. And there was a commendable action taken by the student is they took charge of the traffic rules for a few days. They control traffic, maintain lanes, checked driving license and vehicle fitness, and they proved that peace can be made in the streets by non-violent means with proper rules, regulations, and monitoring. And this 11-day protest resulted in the Bangladesh Road and Transport Law 2018, which is a much more improved version of like 1983 law, and with much better strategies and policies for safer roads. So what the youth in Bangladesh accomplished, I believe, is no less than a global movement. They stood up, they claimed their space, they raised their voices in a domain that was typically led by adults or policymakers. So I think globally we can do it also if we can raise our voice collectively and like this claim our space, we can bring change, the change we need. Thank you.
Farah, thank you very much. And the youth in your country have really shown us what it means to claim our space. So we'll come back to that point in a few minutes. Arthur, your opening statement from Brazil.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Arthur Larocca. I'm from Curitiba, Brazil. I work as an engineer for the Volvo Group. First and foremost, thank you all for attending this panel. Thanks also to the program committee for an invitation to join the discussions. It's really an honor. I think starting with good news, it's important to highlight some of the positive actions we've seen lately. In southern Brazil, for instance, we can already see the results of a joint cooperation between public and private sector. This photo here shows the homologation test of a new landscape, which was built in a steep downhill section of a main road, where an average of 1 accident every 2 days occurred last year. Those lanes, they are basically traffic devices that enable vehicles with braking problems to safely stop. Less than 1 month after its opening, it's estimated that this lane has saved the lives of 41 people, including 36 passengers of a bus. Although this is a good example of how shall we use accident data as feedback loop into road infrastructure, we still need more investment and we still need more action. In a different perspective, the youth consultations that we carried out in Brazil revealed that people, and especially women, avoid the use of public transportation because of lack of safety and accessibility. This is not acceptable. Moreover, in our next picture, our artwork illustrates the challenge that the industrialization and urbanization bring us to our cities. Our artwork illustrates our demand to build footbridges which allow those who live near those highways to a safe crossing. So, in a nutshell, we see good actions in Brazil, and I mean, it's energizing to meet young leaders such as you guys that do step up and fight for road safety. But in that matter, we still stand that there's only one acceptable number, and it's zero accident. So there's still a lot of work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur, and thank you for that positive example. We do need positive examples in our stories. Next, my brother from Nigeria, Simon.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to read my opening statement because I well articulated it, and I hope in subsequent conversation it would shape all the deliberation. You see, my name is Simon Patrick Obi. I'm from Nigeria. You know, sadly, Africa and the entire other low and middle-income countries bear the highest brunt of road traffic fatality, despite accounting to only 1% of the world registered vehicles. You know, so this is sad. For instance, in my country, Nigeria, where I come from, road traffic crashes has remained the #1 highest means of violence dead, ahead of the violence Boko Haram extreme group. But you know what happened in my country? We don't talk about road safety. People don't care about road safety. But people talk about different issues like terrorism and all of these. And these issues do not kill a quarter of people who are being killed every day on the road. And so this is a big issue. The second issue is that road safety is the most ignored subject in our society. And so we find leaders who have no attention. You know, you talk to them about road safety, and they feel that the road is what you make of it. You have to, it's your personal responsibility to make sure that you're safe. You know, so this is the language coming from people who are supposed to protect me, protect others. You know, so you see where I'm coming from. You know, so these are some of the issues we face in my region. And the last one I would like to also mention is young people are not recognized in leadership and policy making. You know, in Africa, you have presidents who have stayed for like 30-something years. Yeah, 60. I mean, they want to even die as president. You know. So these are some of the issues. So young people are not. You know, engage politically and in leadership. But during the course of this conversation, you will see some of the things my organization and I have been doing to make sure that we'll bring road safety at the front there. I also want to challenge us that we must unite to say enough is enough, not just in Africa, but also other regions that are affected by some of these similar cases. And I hope we have a wonderful deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon, for reminding us that some people want to stay president for life. We may have somebody like that in our country, too. I won't talk about it, but, right? Allison, for your opening statement from the United States of America.
My name is Allison, and as someone from the U.S., I'm going to retweet that one. That was good. But yeah, my name is Allison. I'm from New York City. I study civil engineering in Massachusetts, and I am the founder of the Vision Zero Youth Council. I have been an advocate for traffic safety since 2013. I was 13 at the time, and within 15 months, I lost 3 of my friends and classmates to reckless drivers. Some were distracted, some were speeding, and one of them, as crazy and ridiculous as it sounds, had just gotten out of jail, was on drugs, was speeding, had stolen a car, so crazy circumstances. But from all of that sadness and grief, and I was having a conversation with Scott earlier, we have the 5 stages of grief, and as Scott said, we're not robots. We don't go through 5 stages of grief and then move on. And it's what happened in my community. Some people chose to go through those 5 stages of grief and then move on. But then people saw road safety as more of an issue. And in New York City, there are so many people and everyone is constantly moving and it's extremely crowded. And so I decided that, as was said earlier, enough is enough. And in the United States as well, young people currently are more involved in the political environment, but back in 2013 it wasn't the case, and especially as a 13-year-old showing up to town hall meetings and like government offices just going, "Hi, my name is Allison, you need to fix this." The adults were looking at me like, "Who are you?" No. And so I was like, this has to change, and I got all my friends to join together, which is the Vision Zero Youth Council. We were able to lower the city speed limit. We were able to pass a law to increase speed cameras in school zones, which took us 4 years as a small note because the state Senate didn't want it to be passed due to many different factors. But there was a lot of pushback, and again, positive examples. We were able to create change. And just being able to sit here in front of all of you and getting to know all of you, I'm extremely inspired by hearing all of your stories because we do all share similar experiences, and getting to learn from your cultures and your different experiences and the steps that you guys have taken in your countries to solve this issue. And I do have to say that we are all here because we are stronger as a force, as a collective force. Individually, yes, we can create change, we can educate others, but when we all come together in an event like this, that is when we are the strongest. And I am so, so, so excited to see where today takes us. The second World Youth Assembly, it's the second, but it's also the beginning of an incredible movement that is going to change the world. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Allison. What an incredible experience, expertise, and wealth of knowledge we have on the stage. I'm going to request you to respond to a question. And by the way, they don't know the questions that are coming at them. So this is not a staged. I just told them I'll be asking them a question. And I prefer brief answers so that I have time to go to the audience and get. So Allison, just staying with you, you've created an organization called Vision Zero Youth Council. Where are you taking this? Is this only in New York City? Is this going to go to other cities, other states? What's your vision over the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years?
Oh, short timeline there. So the Vision Zero Youth Council is based out of New York City, but I now live in Massachusetts. That's where I go to school. I have been able to work with other youth in Massachusetts, and I am working on currently trying to expand it to other places. I have friends in Houston, Texas, who were affected by road crashes, and I'm trying to expand it a little bit all over the United States. So if any of you are interested, it doesn't have to be the United States. It can be anywhere else in the world. I'm more than happy to work with you guys to really bring youth voices outwards.
Thank you, Allison. And let's keep that in mind. So we have the potential of having Vision Zero Youth Councils outside New York City, outside the US of A, in many other countries. So let's think about that as today unfolds, if that's an idea some of you want to take forward. Simon, so in the face of governments that don't change, right? Think of the Mugabes and Musevenis of the world that don't seem to change, die, or leave. What does one do in this context, right? How do you retain your energy? How do you retain your passion? Talk to me a little bit about that.
All right. Again, I'm the founder and the executive director of GreenLight Initiative. I will respond to you by sharing a little campaign that we recently did and that was successful. Okay, the campaign is titled Fix Itobe Bridge. The hashtag is #FixItobeBridge. It trended a while on Twitter, you know. So, I mean, there's this particular bridge that link the northern part of Nigeria to the southern part of Nigeria. And then the bridge was cut off. And then the government was not ready to fix it. We wrote to them, and they were not ready to respond to us. And so we felt that they were being stubborn, right? So we started a campaign on Twitter, you know, because in Nigeria, the moment something goes viral, the government looks for you and says, oh, how can we stop it? You know, so that's one way we also, because use in making sure that the stubborn leader listening to our demand. So we went on Twitter, I tweeted about it, tagged all the relevant agency, government officials that are concerned, and within 24 hours, they responded to me. Hey, please, we need you to calm down. We need you to calm down. We're sending our team the next day to fix this bridge. And it was miraculous, you know. You know, so, you know, how to tackle this issue is you need to constantly engage them. And then if you don't get their attention, you go to the media. In my country, the media is giving, you know, I speak on radio. I have a radio program that I also talk on. You know, so I talk about it on radio, and you talk about it on social media, and before you know it, they'll be the one looking for you.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you very much, Simon. I'm so glad that you had success. In fact, it's very figurative. You said the bridge between the north and the south. There's a lot more in there between the north and the south. There are many political, social, ethnic, and religious differences. So it's very interesting that they were taking a longer time. Arthur, you represent somebody who is from Latin America, but you, in your opening statement, said something about safety as well. Not safety in terms of road traffic injury, but also in terms of safety for women, safety for gender. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, because it's even broader than just road safety. I mean, it's healthy environment, it's accessibility for women. And I was shocking to actually because I did the youth consultations with my colleague João from Volvo as well. And we had a great women audience in our youth consultations, and we were really, I mean, I guess we could imagine, but we were really shocked by the output of why they didn't use the public transportations. And one thing that we realized that each one of us actually knew a very good initiative, but at the end of the day, we saw that there's some lack of communication or publicity to those kind of initiatives that could help as well. So I think one output of our youth consultation is not just about the initiative itself. You need to make it claim their space so people know about it. One good example of that regarding public transportation is that some countries have the law that after, I think it's 9 p.m., women are allowed to choose where they want to stop really to minimize the distance home between the next bus station. So that's potentially a good idea that could be implemented in Brazil. So yeah, it's, there's still a lot of challenges, and that's one that we need to overcome in Brazil.
Thank you, Arthur. And to be honest, this is a hugely important issue. So when you think about claiming our space, think about each gender claiming our space on the road. It's not about just claiming our space in terms of fighting for road safety, but it is safety and security as well. So Farah, student protests, excellent. How do you make them non-violent? Isn't it the energy, the enthusiasm, somebody picks up a brick, somebody picks up a bat, and very soon you have a violent protest, and then the authorities feel they have the leverage and the excuse to go in and dismantle that. Talk to me a little bit about how did the youth in Bangladesh enable themselves to stay away from that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. That's interesting, and that is where I was focusing. Although the movement initiated because of the death of two high school students, but they remain, I think, non-violent because to show or to prove that it is possible to bring change by without being violent. And another thing that this is actually the downside of the movement, I may say, is they didn't have any spokesperson, like one leader, and so it was kind of, even though the spread all over the country, but it was kind of scattered in many areas. So since no large gathering in one place, so I think it helped to be nonviolent. So.
And I think you're raising a very important point, that movements are great, and if they remain organic without good leadership,
yeah, exactly,
then it may not have the impact. Right. But here we see leadership. We see leadership and we see the shaping, 160 people representing millions of youth around the world, right? So Grace, finally, you represent a country that has great history in road safety, which is Australia. But clearly more work needs to be done. So any specific challenges for Australia or for youth in Australia specifically that come to your mind to share with us?
Yeah, sure. Recently, I'll just start to say, like many countries, we have discovered that we are going to fail to meet the Sustainable Development Goal of reducing deaths by half. We've even failed our own national target, which was much more moderate, which was 30%. So you are correct that there is so much more that needs to be done. In Australia, youths are involved in a fatality in about 25% of crashes, which is a very upsetting statistic. This number has, however, been decreasing in recent years through fantastic work. My team in particular, we deliver road safety education campaigns through schools to children as young as about 3 or 4 years old, all the way up to when they're 17, 18 and getting their licenses, and there's different programs for each of those stages. But one of the emerging issues which will often get blamed on youths, but it's actually a more general societal problem, the research has shown, is driver distraction through mobile phones, which we've seen a little bit about today. It's become such a large issue that we've taken some pretty serious steps recently across Australia to try and combat this. One of them was during our recent National Safety Week. We teamed up with our state government to develop a collaborative message, essentially, to try and stop people using that through TV advertisement, and it's called Set Your Phone and Leave It Alone. Very simple, but it's a very important instruction that we want people to follow. And then to support that, recently there was legislation passed which previously we did have fines for mobile phone use. It was always illegal, but these fines have been increased massively. Now, if you are caught using a mobile phone in Queensland, you face a $1,000 fine for your first offence. That's equivalent to about 500 British pounds, 600 euros or 667 USD roughly, so it's quite large. And if you're a repeat offender, then the penalties get worse.
Yeah.
That's also coincided with the introduction of a brand new technology of these fantastic artificial intelligence cameras which can detect people using their phones in most weather events. During an unannounced secret trial in New South Wales, they detected 3,000 people in 1 week. 75% of Australians admit to using their mobile phone while driving, and 40% of those on a daily basis, which is an absolutely startling statistic when it's essentially just as risky as being a drunk driver.
Great.
So hopefully with the introduction of these new camera technologies, the behavioural messaging to try and change how people engage with their phones, and also the new penalties, we can start to address that issue.
Great, thank you very much, Grace. So, folks, we have time left, which is fantastic, right? So we're going to open this up for questions. You've got some wonderful colleagues up here. They've talked a little bit about what they're doing or where they're from. I'd like you to ask some questions, and we can reflect. You can ask to a specific person, or you can just ask to the panel. And so can we have some mic here? Can I see some hands to see who wants to go first? I also have a rule when I moderate things. If your question goes beyond 2 minutes, I'm cutting you out. You should have the capacity to ask a question within preferably 1 minute, if not 1.5 minutes. Otherwise, it's a speech. And we can't have any more speeches in the room today, okay? So, first question, yes, sir.
Hello?
Yeah, and by the way, I'll take about 2 to 3 questions and then ask you to reflect, okay?
This will be for Grace. I know you said there are new laws, but how are the enforcement in Australia? I know in some countries there are great laws, but the enforcing is not there, so the laws doesn't really work.
What's your name and where you're from? Let's identify you.
Chris Miller, Belize.
Chris from Belize has asked a very important question about enforcement of law. Let's have another question. Who's going next? Let's do the young lady here. Is somebody? Yes.
Hello. My name is Joan. I come from Uganda. And
they would like you to stand up if you don't mind. That's
sorry,
fantastic.
sorry.
Yeah.
My
Sorry,
name
Chris,
is
we didn't ask you to stand up, but
Joan. I come from Uganda. This morning, I would like us to discuss how do we make discussions like this more interesting for fellow young people. In as much as we are young, where I come from, many youth are not interested in affairs like this. They say our leaders, okay, we have one of the longest serving presidents in the world. He doesn't want to leave that place now. Some of these things have become really boring. We are not interested. But these, at the end of the day, they affect us. We are a very young country. So going back to where we come from, how do we get fellow young people interested in issues like
Great
this?
question. Great question. How do you stimulate other people to join your movement? How do you make it more interesting for others? Let me do a third question there. Yes,
Hi.
ma'am.
My name is Daniela. The question is for Allison. How can we ensure the political will is by your side? How would the specific or strategic activities be for us?
Great. Political will question. Keep these questions. I'm going to take one more to test you guys. I'm going to take one more question. The young lady here in yellow, and then each one of you gets a minute to respond to any question, particularly the one asked by you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dilshad Kaur. I'm from India. You said that, ladies in Brazil can pull off or they can get off the bus anytime. In India, I don't know over the whole nation, but we do have a law that, if a lady needs something at the night and the hours are late, one female constable will arrive and with the rest of the police to rescue her. But we tried and no one came. So how do you think we deal with that? We raised the question to the authorities. They had that we have less female force in police, so we cannot reach at the time. There was that and all that hula going around that we cannot come because of so-and-so reason. So how do you think, because we have tried raising our voice, but nothing happened. So how do you think we need to,
Great. Very important question. And of course, India's had very, very tragic cases of individuals on buses being killed and so on. So we remember that. So starting from Grace onwards, feel free to respond to any question. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, Chris. And I'll just preface this by saying I feel lucky to live in Australia where we don't face particular corruption that many other nations do, so that helps. The challenge that we have in Australia and a lot of other countries, I guess, too, is we are a very large country. We have a lot of space, but we have relatively few people, which means our enforcement and police are spread out over a much wider area, and this leads to people thinking that they won't get caught using their phones or drink driving just because the police can't be everywhere at once. Things like the cameras that I mentioned, speed cameras, red light cameras, these new phone detection and seatbelt detection cameras, they're helpful in areas that are particularly populous on roads where there's many people travelling every day. In our regions, it becomes a lot more challenging. People drive hundreds of kilometres just to go to their shopping centre to get Christmas presents, and there might only be a few policemen to manage that entire area, so that is incredibly challenging. And that's where we need to start to address more that underlying behaviour. When enforcement fails, you need to really start focusing on changing human behaviour, which is incredibly challenging, but also lobbying for safer roads so that if there is an accident, that mistake doesn't cost them their life.
Farah?
To address the question, which was about how to stimulate or engage other youths, one thing we can do is to make them understand that they are important and their role is important. What we are thinking of doing is claiming our space in ward council or decision making, we engage youths in the small ward where the councillors make decisions. There should be one youth delegate. This is one example.
Arthur?
Yeah, sure. I received a very great question and challenging question from India. How do we solve that? And I guess that's the $1 million question we would have to say. But I might be wrong, but I think Brazil is lagging behind some other countries in regards to the safety at public transportation. So I think there's room to improvement on that at first place. I think, secondly speaking, it's, of course, speak up, it's important, to claim our space is important, but I think it's not only by claiming our space. I mean, it's really a multi-sectoral approach that we need. It's better lighting on the streets. It's like put pressure on the private sector as well that runs the public transportation in the system, the municipality as well. So it's a very, very challenging question, and it all comes down also to traffic education that we bring out our kids to safe exhibitions, to museums, really, and education as in a general perspective, I would say. So yes, it's a very challenging environment, I would say, but I still think that for the case of Brazil, we're still lagging behind some very good examples that we can see in Europe and in Canada that we could copy, at least to, in a short term, solve, stop the bleeding, I would say, on that matter.
Simon?
So in Nigeria, part of the question I've always asked myself, and the initiative that I run, is how do we make road safety an interest subject? How do we make road safety a conversation among youth people? And this is what we have done, and it has shown results. Okay, recently we organized a hike, and then we climbed. Abuja is surrounded with rocks, a lot of caves and all of that. So we called for a hike, and then we tagged the hike for road safety. Yeah, and then we were shocked at the number of young people that attended the hike. We used the opportunity to preach to them about road safety, you know. So we also have a program called Workouts for Road Safety. I mean, where you come do your exercise, your monthly exercise for road safety. These are some of the things young people like. So we use it to attract them in. And then once they come, we preach to them, we talk to them about road safety. And today we are growing in numbers. We have over 200 volunteers spread across Nigeria. And, you know, the road safety issues is getting into them because they are getting to see the numbers that we are posting, the number of people that are killed on the road, and the effect that is spreading across our society. Secondly, on the political will, you see, it has always been a very difficult and a tough challenge, you know, getting, political will in road safety. But one thing that have worked for me in Nigeria is that, you know, we keep on reminding them that this is an issue. And then we also make them put the numbers out there, you know, because you have to look at the numbers. If you don't have your numbers, it's very difficult for someone to listen to you. Yeah, we put out those horrific numbers. These are the numbers of death. This is the long-time implication of road safety. For instance, you know, there's a World Bank report that states that road traffic crashes actually causes poverty, contribute to poverty, yeah, and then deplete countries' GDP. You know, so we put out all of those statistics to them, and when they read them, they begin to invite us for meeting and deliberation. So that's where we can also do to make this road safety issue work.
Great. Good example. Thank you, Simon.
So to answer the question about political will, I can't really speak about any other country, but at least in the United States, politicians, the one thing they care the most about is what their voters think about them, their constituents. So another comment that was made earlier in the day is, are we being polite about this issue? Do we need to be more vocal about the issue? Do we need to have more rallies and petitions? And like, how do we get politicians to pay more attention? And in the United States, a big thing is vote. Like, you have to vote, and it's the same thing for other countries as well. If politicians sense that people who are voting for their next seat support one issue, they're more likely to vocalize about it when they're on the debate stage. Especially nowadays, we have the Democratic primaries in the United States. It's a very big, big thing. And I can speak about this from experience as well, because as I mentioned earlier, the speed safety camera bill that we were trying to pass, it took us 4 years because there was one member in the Senate that was the tipping vote, and he did not support the bill because he was consistently being flagged down by safety cameras who were in school zones, by the way. They're not just anywhere in the city. They're next to schools, elementary schools, middle schools. And from the beginning of when we were trying to get the bill passed to when it was finally passed, he had gotten at least, I think, 10 tickets, speeding tickets. And 10 years before that, he had killed an elderly lady. So this man was like dead set on not getting this bill passed because he knew that if there were more cameras, if there were bigger fines, he was gonna get in trouble. And I think we were polite. We were too polite at the beginning of when we were trying to get this bill passed. And at the end of it, we told people, okay, that's it. We got young people involved. We told them, this is your life that's at stake. These are your roads. You have to take that up at your local poll, like at the elections. And we voted him out. We voted someone else to take his spot, and the bill was passed. So voting, getting the word out there, education, setting expectations.
In countries where votes are allowed, that's a fantastic assessment.
That one too, yeah.
We know many countries where there is no opportunity to vote, but that's an excellent answer. Thank you very much. I really want to get a second round of questions or reflections from the audience as well. Whether we'll be able to get to all the answers or not, we don't know, but I want you to put your opinions out. So let's get a second round. Could I see where the mics are? So could we start with the young lady here? And remember, the 1 minute rule now is being enforced. So go ahead, ma'am. Yeah, I think you had your hand.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Mariam. I'm from Total Guinea. So you said earlier that how to motivate young people. But my question is how to motivate just the people around you, how to motivate uncles, aunties, parents. Like, I know in Guinea when you talk about those subjects, they will tell you, okay, but I have other problems. I have a family to feed. How to motivate those people?
Great, great. Thank you for that question. Let's not forget the older people.
And older people too.
Okay, can I take a question here? Right at the back near the pole. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jose from Venezuela, and my question is for the whole panel. You've talked about enforcement and the importance of sending a message, but I want to know your experience with design and how street design can be used to improve safety. And well,
great, thank you for that question. So it's about infrastructure improvement. Could I have the gentleman in the white shirt right here?
All right, my name is Steve, and I'm from Malawi. I think my question also cuts across the whole panel. We've spoken about, an advocacy campaign that actually led to a successful result. We've also spoken about, students sort of demonstrating around. But what I want us to reflect about is on the current thinking is on safe systems approach. So which means that we need to also think around the other components of road safety. How do we build actually a sustainable road safety system? Or what should we consider in that sort of thinking so that we have actually safe systems that is running?
Great. Thank you very much.
Longer term.
Question about sustainable road safety systems. And the lady in pink here, let's get.
Hello everyone, my name is Hana Hashed, I'm from Egypt. And I would like to add a little bit to what my colleague said about a sustainable road safety. And also to what my colleague Arthur said about, he talked about how in Brazil they're trying to have this rule where after 9 p.m. women can choose where they want to stop. And I want to talk about safety for women in my country. So there's a lot of sexual harassment on public transportation. And then we are starting to see some initiatives by the youth to stop that, at least statistically, to reduce the numbers of sexual harassment. So for example, we're having initiatives like pink taxis, where taxi drivers are women. And then the country is offering, in the subways, they're creating carts for women only. However, in my opinion, this does not sit well with me, and I do not find this as solving the root problem. Mm-hmm. So, however, statistically, these initiatives do reduce the number of sexual harassments when you keep women together. So, to what extent does the end justify the means, or?
Great, important question. There might be interventions that are in place, but are those interventions justified by all accounts? Are they comfortable for everyone? I know many of you have raised your hands. I unfortunately won't be able to get to you, but here's my suggestion. Put your questions on Twitter, tag the conference, let's get a conversation going. And here are my next set of instructions. Each one of you has 1 minute. Grab a question, answer that, also make any other final statements that you would like. Okay, so let's start. Who has the mic right now? Closer to Allison. So Allison, you start, and we'll move this way.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that first question that was about getting youth involved. I think a big thing is starting a conversation, which is what we're doing here. People will be more attracted to an issue if they hear someone that is close to them be passionate about it. It's what happened with me. It's how I got a lot of my friends involved in traffic safety advocacy. There's so much happening in the world today. There are so many issues. We're in the home of Greta Thunberg. It's the climate change, right? And so there's so many things that are trying to grab our attention, but if people feel that there's that pull towards a specific issue because someone they're close to cares about it a lot, they're more likely to be active about it, participate, show up to these events, and be more vocal. So keeping that conversation going, and it's, I think, the most important thing that we can do.
So Allison is reminding us that each one of us is an agent of change. We do have personal influence, and how we intend to use it depends on us. But don't forget that you do have the capacity to change those uncles and aunties of yours. Simon.
People emotions are tied to stories a lot. People often get attached to stories. So how do you motivate people to begin to do road safety or talk about road safety? Stories of Scotch, could be shared. You could tell them stories of what happened to these persons and all of that. Story has a way of, changing people's perception. So that's one way that has worked for us. We share story, but beyond sharing story, also give us statistics, because that is also what people look at and say, yes, man, what this person is telling me is really right. So again, enough is enough for the people we're losing on our road, and I encourage us all as young people to rise up to the challenges of road safety. It's not going to be easy, but let's continue to push harder. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Africa is a continent of stories, very, very powerful oral history across centuries. But I love the fact that you brought in evidence. As a researcher, that's critical for me. There are stories that will make you feel good, but they may not actually work to reduce road traffic injuries and deaths. So we have to somehow distinguish those two elements. Arthur.
Yeah, sure. I would like to contribute to the question regarding road design, and I think that's a very important topic because talking about South America, we are in some sort of firefighting, because at the same time that we need to fix our old infrastructure, we are also at the same time building new roads, and we must ensure that besides fixing the old ones, we build them correctly. We need to build at least 3-star roads. So I think one important thing to take away from this is that we should use data, statistic data, accident data to build new roads. So we already know where are the sections, the most dangerous sections of the road. So we cannot just forget about this data and start building new road as a blank page. No, we need to know the history, to have that background to new infrastructure.
I agree, Arthur, and especially when construction projects get leakages, and so you dedicate a certain amount of money to build a road, but you find that actually 20% of it was used to build the road, 80% cannot be found, right? So those are fundamental issues that begin to, and this is irrespective of which country is involved or who's the donor. Don't think that just because the donor is an international organization, leakages don't happen. Don't think that just because it's a Western nation, leakages will not happen. So this is part of the reality we build in. But thank you for reminding us. Farah.
I'd like to add something to the sustainability of the road safety issue. So I'll talk from the lower middle income country perspective. What we need is allocate specific budget for road safety issues, which we don't have currently. And secondly is the multi-sectoral involvement, like the Ministry of Education for incorporating safety education in primary school and high school. Then the health sector for post-crash injury, and industrial sector for the construction. So multi-sectoral involvement is needed. And the third is we need to generate evidence. In my speech, I said the estimation that 60 people die every day. It is a WHO estimation, but there is no national data for this. So in the lower middle income country like Bangladesh need to strengthen their research system to generate evidence. And finally, we need to set indicators, like we have a 5th-year plan and 7th-year plan, and we need to have specific indicators in our national plan and a strategy that what we want to achieve. Right. And this is how we can sustainable.
Thank you, Farah. And maybe what we can do is tomorrow and day after, as you are, for those of you who are attending the ministerial summit, when you find a minister, a deputy minister, a vice minister, a director general, grab them and ask them these 3 or 4 things that she just said. How much of your budget do you spend on road safety? And if they say, well, I don't remember, how come you don't remember? You're the minister. Why don't you remember? You're the minister. Preferably put Facebook Live right then, there. Right? Scare them. I think it's really important to do that, Farah. We need to scare them. because they are accountable to us as the people, right? Accountability is always to the people. Grace.
I'll just quickly touch on the safe systems approach that you asked about. So safer drivers in safer cars on safer roads with safer speeds. There needs to be work done across all of these sections. Each one has its own set of individual problems and solutions. You can't fix everything with just one. We've already spoken about sort of safer driving behaviour. That's a really, really critical one. Two that I'll touch on, and something that I find really critical in this space, is to start to shine the light on where those safety failures are. An example of how we've done this for safe infrastructure or safe roads, every year we ask members of the public to submit to what was called the Unroadworthy Roads survey, and we get thousands upon thousands of people identifying locations on roads where they don't feel as though the road is up to standard. And then we create lists about where the worst places people report are the places where most people have said this is not a safe road, and that gets published in newspapers across the state. It's a big one, and it gets the attention of the politicians. Yeah. Another one, just to highlight, we've done recently is, you're all probably all familiar with the ANCAP vehicle safety rating. What many people don't know is that as vehicles get older, they become less and less safe. So our team's partnered with some research universities to retest older vehicles, because 3 out of every 4 vehicles sold is second-hand. And cars that when they were new were receiving 4 and 5 star safety ratings are now only 1 or 2 stars. And these cars are being bought as people's children's first car when they get their license. So people are putting their children in these incredibly unsafe cars, and they're just unaware of it. So we shine the light on that, and we spread the information to people who are in the market for that particular vehicle.
Yeah. So naming and shaming, showing them where problems arise. And of course, when cars don't work in the West, they're sent to the developing world, because then they can have those cars, right?
Australia, we tend to run them into the ground 20 plus years.
Yeah. So I think very important statements there. So as we begin to close this session, these are very powerful testimonies that the 5 of you have provided. Let me spend a minute of my own reflections. In 1994, I stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly and said, more than 1 million people are dying from road traffic injuries, we need to do something. In 2004, I co-edited the World Report on Road Traffic Injury Prevention, and I said, more than 1 million people are dying from road traffic injuries, we need to do something. In 2014, I was at the World Health Assembly, and I said, more than 1 million people are dying, we need to do something. So it's not you who are tired. I am tired. I am very frustrated, but I'm also angry. And I'm angry because I've been part of this field for over 25 years. And I've been at this podium long enough to recognize that the generation of evidence, the generation of coalitions and partnerships, the generation of new investments and money, indeed has brought us to a stage where we can have a global summit, that we can have a youth assembly. But it hasn't brought us to the stage of reducing the numbers. And so a couple of days ago, in a medical journal called The Lancet, I put an editorial saying, is this going to be just another summit on global road safety? If that's the case, we'll have many ministers, good declarations, good food, and we go back to exactly the same, and we'll come back 5 years, more than 1 million people are dying from road traffic injuries. Or are we fundamentally about changing the discourse here? And that requires a very difficult conversation. And that difficult conversation is maybe acknowledging that there is failure. Failure of action, failure of implementation, failure of investment. And if those 3 failures are to be acknowledged, then we can begin to say, well, what happened? How can we do better? We are not interested, I am not interested in hearing more nice words from ministers. I'm only interested in monitoring their actions. And as you all have demonstrated, you actually serve as role models for those ministers, because you act, you don't speak, as much as you act. And so for the next 2 days, I ask you, I request you, as someone who's been in the field for a long time, take your energy, take your wisdom, take the capacity of your collaborations, and make sure that the next 2 days are not in vain, they're not futile, and they actually lead to real action. Thank you for claiming your space. Thank you to all of you for the work you do.